Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Hitting Bags and Stealing Balls. I'm your host, Matthew Fitzwater. Today is Thursday, April 17th, 2025, although you're probably not getting this until Friday. And yes, I know I'm a couple days behind, so today's episode, we're going to be covering the 10th through the 13th, okay, which was one series ago, but unfortunately, I haven't had Wi-Fi for a few days, so I'm just now getting to film this and upload it. So, you'll have this on Friday, and then the very next day on Saturday, you'll have the next episode. So, covering the current series that we're in now. And I was going to do one big episode, just covering both series, but I don't feel like editing like that because it takes more time than you think to edit, especially with how many mistakes I make. So, we'll knock out, the 10th through the 13th, and I'll just say a couple things. First, thank you for joining me, okay? If you're new here, subscribe, follow, like, comment, let me know ways I can improve. Constantly, like I've said before, we're constantly trying to improve. I'm very proud of where I'm at now, but obviously I can always get better, and I know that. So, any feedback is very welcome. Just don't be a dick about it. And then basically the way that I'm doing these recaps now, okay, so they come out about twice a week, after every series. Again, sometimes like now, for example, you might not get them right when the series ends. I know that can be frustrating, but I do work full-time. Obviously, if the Wi-Fi goes out, there's just not much I can do. But we try to go 2 times a week. Basically, the way it is that I'm going to go through each series. I'm going to let you know the scores of the games, any stellar performances from pitchers, from batters, and then probably the best improvement I've made to my podcast so far is including videos. So now I'll include, 1 or 2 videos throughout my recaps. And then at the end, I'm going to go over what my favorite, play was over the entire week, basically, of the series. So we've got those. And then at the end, I go over the standings, okay? I don't think I'm going to do that this episode simply because, like I said, I'm a couple days behind already, and you're going to get the next series, the next day after you watch this. So I'm just going to do the standings then. And then I'm going to start doing player stats. Again, not going to do that this episode. I'm really sorry, guys. I got to get this series out there. I didn't want to do too much editing, so that's why you're kind of just getting a half episode today. Super fast, but start looking for player stats. You're going to get the standings. Obviously, the recaps, a couple videos. I really like where we're at now. I'm trying to get it a little bit longer. I think the stats will help with that, because I'm sitting right around the 25-minute mark so far this season, which has only been like 4 or 5 recaps or something like that. But I want to get a little bit longer just because I know it's easier the shorter it is to kind of fit it in if you're driving to work, driving home from work. But, if you're like me and you really love baseball, I could listen to an hour and a half long podcast. Obviously, I don't want it to be that long. I'd like it to sit around the 40, 45-minute mark. So we'll figure stuff out as we go through the season. But also, I just want to add that I'm working on a couple videos, so you're going to see them sprinkled in the rest of the month. So on the 28th, exactly, 1 month from the regular season starting, not including the Tokyo series, I'm going to do my May power rankings. So basically, the teams, I'm going to re-rank the teams going into May. So basically, how they performed in April, whether or not their performance really kind of fits their team. The Angels, unfortunately, are a perfect example of that. The Angels are overperforming right now, I think, so they're going to be higher than they were. I think I had them, in the back end of the 20s, maybe like 25. They're going to be higher than that, but they're not going to be 12, you guys. They're just not going to be that high, I'll be honest with you. Their record may make them look like the 12th best team in baseball, but they're not. And so I'm going to do that. I love watching prospects, okay? The game of baseball grows because of these kids that come in the league and, they change how we look at certain things. Jackson Merrill, Corbin Carroll, Ellie De La Cruz, guys like that have come out in recent years and really shaped the future of baseball. And so I love keeping an eye on them. So what we're going to do is I'm going to I'm not sure if it's going to be this upcoming week. I think it will be. I think it'll be late next week, so probably a week from when you're watching this, next Friday, whenever. I'm going to do a prospect update. So I'm not going to look at prospects in the minor leagues. I'm going to look at prospects that have reached the majors and how they're doing so far this season. Okay? So we're going to be talking about guys like Chase Dollander, Jackson Jobe, Dylan Cruz, okay? And just kind of looking, spoiler alert, Dylan Cruz is not doing too hot, which I did not predict. I thought he was going to immediately come in guns a-blazing, but we'll talk to that when we get to that. Very excited about that. I think an easy way for guys to get into baseball that haven't really dove deep into it is to watch the young kids coming up. You know what I mean? Like yeah, you're going to like Ohtani, you're going to like Judge, but I think it's easier to root for, people that are just coming in the league and like that are young kids. Like when Juan Soto came in the league at, 18, 19, whenever he was, and he instantly started, just blowing the league up. I mean, that to me is kind of what you look for. And Roki Sasaki, I'll be talking about Roki Sasaki. And so just keep an eye on for that. I'm very excited for that. And then the final video that I'm kind of sprinkling in, this might actually be on Monday. I haven't fully decided yet. I think it'll be on Monday, though. I'm kind of doing a fact or fiction in terms of I'm looking at hot starts from really unknown players versus cold starts from really, like Alec Boehm, Brent Rooker, Mark Vientos, guys like that who just haven't, like all those guys are hitting like 180 right now. And so I'm kind of going through and like whether or not I believe that's going to stick around or whether or not I think they're going to turn it around. And so I'm going to do that as soon as possible. Like I said, looking to be Monday, but you never know. So just keep an eye on that. Those three, they're definitely coming out sometime in May. Okay, or April, excuse me. Sometime in April. So we got 2 weeks of April left. You're going to see those three at some point. I'm just going to sprinkle them in. And then obviously you're going to get the recaps. But now that I've explained that, we'll go ahead, we'll move on. We'll start with the first series. And we'll start with the San Francisco Giants as they would leave the warm West Coast for the freezing East Coast as they would travel to New York to take on the Bronx Bombers. And in Game 1, they would send Marcus Stroman straight to the injured list with a 5-run first. But weather would quickly put an end to that game in the 6th inning, and the Giants would cruise to an easy 9-1 victory. Game 2 would go the opposite way as the Yankees would get a quick lead and hold it and win 8-4. And Game 3, the Yankees would get to Logan Webb fast as they would score 3 runs in the first 2 innings. But Carlos Rodon would get got by Jung-Ho Lee, who would have a 2-homer game, including a 3-run shot to put the Giants on top. And they would hold on to win 5-4 and win the series. And next up, the first place Tigers would travel to Minnesota to take on the division rival Twins. And in Game 1, David Festa would outpitch Reese Olson, but it wouldn't matter because their bullpen would blow it. And the Detroit Tigers would take Game 1, 7-6. And in Game 2, my pick for AL Rookie of the Year, Jackson Jobe would come out and shut the Twins out with ease, as he would go 6 innings and allow 0 runs, and the Tigers would win easily 4-0. But in Game 3, the Minnesota Twins would prevent the sweep, as their bullpen would bounce back, only allowing 1 base runner over 4 innings and striking out 7, as the Twins would win Game 3 5-1. Another AL Central matchup would take place in Cleveland, as the Guardians would host the Royals. And in Game 1, it would be all Guards, as they would win easily 7-0. And the first video I want to show you is Jonathan India making a very bad error over at third base, which first, don't know why he's playing third base, okay? He's already not a good fielder at second. Sorry, he's just really not. I expected him to be more of the DH, over there in Kansas City. But, yeah, so go ahead and take a look at this error because they got to move him off of third base.
High pop on the infield, the third baseman, India. He drops the ball! My goodness. And another run score.
So again, that just shouldn't happen. I don't like being too hard on guys. I get it. Everybody makes errors, okay? But why is he at third base, for one? Two, he's really not off to a great start this season. I was hoping he would be more of a stellar leadoff hitter, kind of like he was for the Reds, because he's been more known for his hitting than his fielding. But they got to figure stuff out in Kansas City right now, especially in that division where it's just they're all right there. And they can't be, obviously this didn't cost them the game. They lost 7-0. But, you don't want him to be costing you games over there at third base. So they need to figure that out. But I guess I've seen worse. I'll leave it at that. In Game 2, the Guardians would cruise through 8 with a 5-run lead before Emmanuel Clase would come in and give up more runs. What a weird start to the season of this for Clase. But luckily, the lead was so large it didn't matter. The Guardians would end up winning 6-3. And in Game 3, Cole Reagans would throw 7 2/3 innings of 1-run ball as he would strike out 10 and prevent the sweep for the Kansas City Royals. Next up, the bottom of the NL East would take on the bottom of the AL East as the underperforming Braves would travel to Steinbrenner Field to face the, how I expected them to perform, Rays in a 3-game series. And in Game 1, it would start out with Taj Bradley, I believe that's how you pronounce that, throwing 6 innings of 1-run ball as the Rays would take Game 1 6-3. In Game 2, the Rays would hold the lead late, but the Braves lineup would wake up just in time as they would come back down in the 8th and end up winning 5-4. But on Sunday, to close out the series, Chris Sale would continue his rough start to the season as he would give up 3 earned runs in 4 innings, and the Rays would close out the series with a win 8-3. Now, a battle for last place in the NL Central would send the Pirates to Cincinnati, and Brady Singer would be waiting to prove why the Jonathan India trade was worth it, as he would get his 3rd win of the season, tied for first in Major League Baseball, and the Reds would win 5-3. In Game 2, Ellie De La Cruz would make his bobblehead night even more special as he would crush a grand slam, and the Reds would take Game 2 5-2. And in Game 3, Mr. NL Cy Young favorite Hunter Green would come out and he would show the Pirates who's boss. 7 innings, 0 runs, 8 strikeouts, and the Reds complete the sweep of the Pittsburgh Pirates in Game 3 with a 4-0 victory. And then 2 very young teams that are stuck in a rebuild would face off in one of the ugliest parks in baseball, as the Nationals would travel to the Miami Marlins. And in Game 1, Miami would take a 4-0 lead, but the Nationals would score 7 runs over the next few innings to finish the Game 1 victory 7-4. And then in Game 2, every inning from the 2nd to the 7th would include a scored run, but Miami would stay just ahead for a close 7-6 victory. And in Game 3, Miami would win the series, as they would attack the Nationals bullpen for 7 runs and end up winning 11-4. So which color sock is best? Well, that's the question being answered in Chicago, as the color red would travel to take on the color white. And in Game 1, Boston's defense would look absolutely atrocious as they commit 5 errors and get pummeled by the White Sox 11-1. But in Game 2, they'd keep it close, and their defense would look a lot better, but it'd be for naught, as Aroldis Chapman would come into the 9th and give up the walk-off, as the Chicago White Sox would take Game 2 3-2. Now, could the White Sox really sweep the Red Sox? No. We knew the baseball gods weren't going to allow it, as Garrett Crochet would face his former team and throw 7 1/3 innings of 1-run ball, as he would strike out 11 batters, and the Red Sox would take Game 3 and salvage the series 3-1. And the series in St. Louis would include a stellar pitching performance in every single game, as Andre Pallante would start the series off on Friday with 7 innings of shutout ball, and Matthew Liberatore would throw 6 innings of shutout ball on Sunday to win the series for St. Louis. Luckily for Phillies fans, it would be their pitcher in Game 2 that had a stellar performance, as Christopher Sanchez would only allow 1 run over 6 1/3 innings, as the Phillies would take Game 2. The scores would be 2-0, 4-1, and 7-0, as the St. Louis Cardinals would take Games 1 and 3 against the Philadelphia Phillies. In another series where a New York team takes on a West Coast team, the New York Mets would travel to Sacramento to take on the A's. And in Game 1, Pete Alonso would continue his absolutely beautiful start to the season, which, when I start talking stats, we'll get to that because, yeah, Pete Alonso's absolutely crushing to start the season. But he goes 3 for 3 in Game 1 with 3 RBIs to lead the Mets past the A's in a close one, 7-6. And I also just want to highlight one more video, and that's Brandon Nemo's leaping catch. So take a look at this.
And he drives one out to left, but right at Nimmo, and it goes into his glove as he makes the leap. Well, Nimmo retreated. That ball took off, and he took off with it.
But in Game 2, Pete Alonso would go 0 for 4, and the Mets would lose 3-1. Now in Game 3 on Sunday, in the pitching matchup I told you all to watch, it delivered. Kodai Senga would throw 7 shutout innings, and Luis Severino would only allow 1 run across 5 2/3 innings. But the A's bullpen would absolutely implode, and the Mets would take an easy Game 3 victory to win the series 8-0. The Texas Rangers would travel to Seattle to take on the division rival Mariners. And in Game 1, DeGrom would get hit again as he gives up 3 runs in just 4 innings pitched, and the Mariners take Game 1 5-3. And in Game 2, Brian Wu would wow the crowd. Yeah, say that super fast 5 times. As he throws 7 innings of 1-run ball, and the Mariners win Game 2 easily, 9-2. And with the sweep set up for Sunday, Logan Gilbert would come out and do his thing. And the Mariners complete the sweep of the Texas Rangers and bring themselves within a game and a half of first place, as they would win Game 3, 3-1. Also, my favorite play of the week is actually from this series, but we'll get to that after, we finish all the series. But it's not really a defensive highlight. It's just something that I like to see, just a little more effort, but we'll get to it. The 7-6 Brewers would travel to Arizona to take on the 7-6 Diamondbacks. In Game 1, it would be all Brewers as they win 7-0. In Game 2, Corbin Burns would continue his disappointing start to the season as he would give up 3 runs in 6 innings. But the Brewers would soon miss Devin Williams in the back of that bullpen as they would take a 4-0 lead into the 9th and blow it. The D-backs rallied to eventually win on a sac fly. And in Game 3, nothing to talk about, but the D-backs would end up winning the series with a 5-2 victory. And Nick Pivetta would welcome the Rockies into San Diego with 10 strikeouts over 7 shutout innings as the Padres win big in Game 1, 10-0. And in Game 2, Chase Dollander would make an okay start for a rookie trying to find his way, but it wouldn't matter because Kyle Hart would throw 6 innings of shutout ball, only allowing 1 hit as the Padres would win Game 2, 2-0. And Game 3 on Sunday would go exactly how you expect it to, as the Padres would complete the sweep of the Rockies behind the best pitching performance of the series, as Michael King would throw a complete game shutout. I call that justice for the Rockies unveiling one of the ugliest uniforms I've seen in baseball. Only 3 series left, and next up we'll travel down to Texas as the surprisingly good Angels would travel to take on everyone's least liked team, the Houston Astros. And in Game 1, Mike Trout would hit his 6th home run of the season, but the Houston Astros would have 3 players all hit their first, as Cam Smith, Isaac Paredes, and Yandy Diaz all go deep, and the Astros cruise to a Game 1 victory, 14-3. And in Game 2, the Angels would bounce back as Tyler Anderson would throw a shutout across 5 2/3 innings, and the Angels would tie up the series with a 4-1 win. But in Game 3, Houston would end the homestand with a win, as Isaac Paredes would homer for his 3rd straight game. Yes, every game this series, Paredes hit a home run. And the Astros would win the series with a final score of 7-3. Now, an AL East matchup would take place as the Toronto Blue Jays would travel to Baltimore to take on the Orioles, and Game 1 would get rained out and postponed to a later date. What a fun start to the series. But in Game 2, Anthony Santander would finally hit his first home run of the season, almost a month in, but it wouldn't matter as the Orioles would take Game 1, technically Game 2, 5-4. Sunday's game would go into the 10th inning tied 6-6 before Miles Straw would get an infield single, and the Blue Jays would take the lead 7-6 and hold on to even the 2-game series as both teams take one game. Now, the final series we'll talk about is the one that started the 2025 season, as the Tokyo series would take place again 1 month later as the Cubs would travel to LA to take on the Dodgers. And in Game 1, Yamamoto would continue to solidify his position at the top of that loaded rotation as he would throw 6 shutout innings and strike out 9 as the Dodgers win Game 1 3-0. But in Game 2, the Cubs would come back and give the Dodgers their worst home shutout loss in team history as the Cubs would demolish the Dodgers 16-0. The Cubs would have 8 players record at least 1 RBI, and Ben Brown would have a stellar start. But in Game 3, it would be much closer, and the Cubs would get it done to win the series against the Dodgers, as they would win the game 4-2. All right, you guys, so that is it for the series recap of the 10th through the 13th. Again, I'm not going to do the standings this episode. I'm not going to do the player stats yet, but you're going to see the next series recap and all that stuff, one day after. The final game of the current series is getting played, tonight. So we'll be all caught up by Sunday afternoon. Thank you for being patient with me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, like, comment, subscribe, share, get me out there. But before I let you go, we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at what was one of my favorite plays of the entire series. And it's not really that stellar, but I just love it because it's a little bit of extra, hustle from a player. And it's so funny because the first baseman is so nonchalant. And then he's just looking around like, wait a second. So we'll go ahead and I'll let you see that, and then we'll end things.
Weak ground ball. Berger in on the grass. He will apply the tag. Oh, they missed the tag. He missed the tag. A spin cycle there from Polanco. How on earth?
Texas is challenging a no tag at first base.
Oh, that's a great angle. Did he get the sleeve of Polanco's jersey?
No, he missed it completely.
After review, the runner stands. Runner safe.
So yeah, I always like seeing that little extra effort. Nothing special, but it's pretty funny too, just to see, everything looks like it's going smooth, and then all of a sudden there's a runner at first, and the first baseman is looking around like, what just happened? So yeah, I like seeing those little plays every now and then. Baseball is just such a fun sport. But again, thank you for tuning in, and look for the next series recap, a day from whenever you're watching this.